Well, hello. Here, let's actually face you. Welcome to Levels Plus Weekly episode 17, where technical difficulties have affected the shoot a little bit. But while I wait for this download to happen, let me tell you what we're doing this week. I'm still kind of thinking about the PlayStation 3 store shutting down. So I want to spend at least part of the episode today talking about things I recommend picking up on the PS Store before it shuts down in July. I've got some physical games, but the majority of it is related to games I have on my PS3. And as you can maybe see, it's a little bit on the fuzzy side from what I could tell, but I'm having to re-download some stuff that magically vanished off of my PS3 hard drive. So I'm not particularly thrilled about that news, and I'm not really sure how I accidentally had, if I did it, if just this thing's old, I guess, is the moral of the story here. Let's talk about some of the classic stuff. So there's a lot, and when I say a lot, there's I want to say at least over 100 PS1 games that you can buy on the PS3. And I've got 23 in here that I want to talk about. And we'll just start at the bottom and work my way up. If I haven't played it, I won't talk about it. I have briefly touched on Breath of Fire 4. This game's a little bit on the expensive side. So buying it for $6 on the PSN store is a good idea if you have any interest in the Breath of Fire series whatsoever. It's beautiful. It's definitely one of Capcom's late era 2D/3D efforts where things are clicking together really nicely. It's a shame that 3 never made it onto the PSN store. For some reason they skipped over that. But this is arguably the best of the classic ones from what I've heard. 1 and 2 are kind of mired in translation problems, and 3 is pretty good too from what I hear, but I've heard more positive stuff about 4. It's got really nice art too. Actually, I love the Breath of Fire art style just in general. I've only dabbled with Klonoa, so I'm going to not touch on it. Strider 2, which I'm wearing my shirt for. You probably can't see it super well because it's gotten a little bit darker since when I started shooting this. But Strider 2 comes with 2 games. You get the arcade Strider, which came out in 1989, as well as this port of Strider 2, which was a pretty late era arcade game from Capcom. So you get 2 for 1 here for $6, and Strider 2 is really fun. It's a different style of game than the original Strider. It's definitely more actiony, less set piecey. I think it's the best of the 2 arcade games, as well as it's better than the NES game. I think that Strider 2014 is the best Strider game. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. But this is not a bad deal if you are interested in the series at all and you want a good action game. I feel I should start with Suikoden before I touch on Suikoden 2. But both of them are marvelous RPGs. Definitely the best ones, in my opinion, that Konami made out of their entire history. Suikoden, it's a little bit simpler, a little bit more traditional. Still excellent. That is not a mark against it whatsoever. I have it in my top 111, so clearly I love it. Suikoden 2 is one of my top 50 games of all time. It's just everything that was good in Suikoden 1 is better in Suikoden 2, save a couple of things here and there. The translation on this one is a lot rougher, and some of the localization did not carry through. So there's like moments where there's supposed to be music and there's not, because they didn't localize the song. Despite the technical problems though, I love Suikoden 2. It's the reason why I actually kickstarted the spiritual successor Oikoden Chronicles, is because of these two games. Marvelous ones. And this one here is like $300 or so in the used market, and you can pay $10 and get it now. I would pay the 10. And the original Suikoden is 6, and that one usually goes for about 80 to 100. Pay the 6. Tron Bonne, I haven't played yet, but this is another one of those where it's really expensive to buy it used. More than Suikoden 2, and like I said, that's like $300. This is $300 to $400. It just was a very low print run, and it's high in demand. But it's highly recommended to pick it up for $6 and have it on your PS3 or your PSP. So I am going to recommend you buy all the Namco Museum games, all 5 of them. So that is an investment. That is $30. But these are unique compilations. Namco and Tosei grabbed a lot of interesting titles and built museum exhibits around them in charming PS1 graphics. It really just touches me how awesome they took this concept of a museum and just made it the motif for these PS1 games. If you don't want all 5, I would recommend 5 the most out of them all, because you'll get 2 excellent games in Legend of Valkyrie and Baraduke. Metrocross is strange, but it's fine. Dragon Spirit's a good shoot 'em up, and Pac-Mania is a solid Pac-Man sequel. But 4 has Pac-Land, Orodyne, Assault, The Return of Ishtar, and the Genji and Heiki clans. Pac-Land is one of the earliest 2D platformers. It shows it, but it's interesting. Orodyne is a pretty cool shoot 'em up. It's a horizontal shoot 'em up, if I remember right. Assault is a overhead tank game. It's a shooter. The Return of Ishtar is the sequel to the Tower of Draga, and you can play as Gil and Key as they escape the tower. So it's a direct sequel. What I find interesting about the Tower of Draga series in its early days is the first 3 games all set up each other. The Quest of Key for Famicom is a prequel, and then you have the Tower of Draga, and then you have the Return of Ishtar. Very cool. I just really dig it. Genji and the Heiki clans is probably the worst game on here. It's interesting. It's very technologically advanced for what it is, but it doesn't play super well. And then we'll go up to the other Namco museums real quick. So Namco Museum Volume 1 is very classic. You get Pac-Man, Bosconian, Pole Position, Galaga, Rally X, New Rally X, and Toy Pop. So you got like Pac-Man, Galaga, Rally X, and Pole Position are like some of Namco's biggest titles of this period. I haven't played this yet. I literally just bought it. I bought 1 and 2 earlier this week to kind of fill out my collection. So I already had 3 physically, and I wanted to have them all. Namco Museum 2 has ZVS Super Pac-Man Dragon Buster. And titles I can't read from here. ZVS Mappy Gapless, Grobda, and Dragon Buster, and Super Pac-Man. In Japan, they got QDQ instead of Super Pac-Man, as well as Bombi, which was not included on the North American version. But yes, I would recommend getting all the Namco museums because they're unique. They're really cool, and the new Namco museums just don't have this aesthetic anymore. Darkstalkers 3 is a bit of a tough recommendation unless you just want Darkstalkers 3 with all the characters that are in the series. And the reason I say that is that Resurrection is still on here. So if you want arcade authentic Night Warriors in Darkstalkers 3, go with Resurrection. If you want the Darkstalkers 3 mechanics with all of the characters in the series, that is probably one of the least compromised of Capcom's 2D arcade ports. This is a good pickup for $6. Mega Man Legends 2 is another one that I played a little bit of, so I can't really get too deep into recommending it beyond the fact that it's difficult to get a hold of physically for a good price. This is in the $100 to $200 range. I contemplated buying the original Mega Man Legends again. I had it before as a physical, but I just don't like it. Doesn't control well enough because there's no analog. So I think I'm going to try to get the Mega Man 64 instead for that. And Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. This is probably the best of the two pre-3 Personas. They never released the original Persona on PS3. They did a remake on the PSP, as well as the first half of Persona 2, but they didn't release Eternal Punishment on the PSP. This is a very different game in contrast to 3, 4, and 5, which sets itself in high schools. This is still young people, but it's a very different game. It's more mature in a lot of ways, even though it's rated teen. And it's got that distinctive Shin Megami Tensei art style in contrast to how 3, 4, and 5 kind of went on their own. Really good game though, what I remember of it. I bought it because I want to actually get deeper into it. It's very different, and I'm going to probably pull up a guide so I fully understand everything. But those are the PS3 games that I have played, that I downloaded. I also grabbed Xenogears and Castlevania Chronicles on my purchases, and I bought those because they're kind of hard to find at a good price. Chronicles has gotten really expensive. I remember seeing that at Target for like $5 when the PS2 and early PS3 days were a-going, and I passed it up. But you know, as Castlevania is my favorite franchise, and I bought the Disc System original and Simon's Quest, I'm kind of wanting to have them all. So Parasite Eve, Tomba, Chrono Cross, Wild Arms 2. Although I don't know if I'm going to keep Wild Arms 2. I haven't decided. I still have the physical Wild Arms 1, but I'm going to probably sell it. Alundra, Dino Crisis 2, Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider 2, and Klonoa. Those are the other games I bought on here, but I haven't really got into them, so I don't have a recommendation for you. The PlayStation 2, I would recommend, if you're into Suikoden at all, getting 3 and 4 while you can. The downside to Suikoden 3 on the PS3 is that the way that they did these PS2 classics, it's kind of its own little separate entity. So you're not going to be able to link your progress from Suikoden 2 to Suikoden 3 because it will not find the memory card. That's disappointing. I managed to get Suikoden 3 through 5 in physical, but I can't play the physical on the PS3 because I have a Slim. So I will probably continue to plug through this. I dabbled with it a little bit. It's different. It's a different game. It's not quite like Suikoden 1 and 2. It's charming though. It's still good. It's just different, and it wasn't quite what I was in the mood for. I also got Nocturne, but with the remake coming up and they fixed a lot of the issues that it initially had when it launched in Japan, unless you are just wanting the original experience, I don't know if I could recommend that. And then Grandia 3 apparently has no text. It was one of the very last PS2 games added to the PS3, so that's probably why. Along with Suikoden 4. I like the Grandia series. Grandia 2 is a good game. I haven't really gotten to Grandia 1 all that much. And buying it on here for $10 is a lot cheaper than buying it used at this point. Other games I would recommend, if you don't have Capcom vs. SNK 2, buy that. That is my favorite Capcom fighting game. It's splendid. I have the GameCube one, and I imagine that the PS2 one is just as solid as the GameCube one, if not better, because it's got a better default controller. So I would recommend picking that up. Trying to see what's in my case over there that's also on PSN. Unfortunately, most of the stuff that I have physically is not on PSN. That's what PS2 stuff I've got, and my one recommendation for stuff I don't have is apparently Capcom vs. SNK 2. Strider finally finished, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. And while that installs, we'll talk about the physical games that I have that you can get on PSN. So, in terms of PS3 exclusive stuff, I wanted to make sure that I didn't recommend things that you could get on a next-gen console. So PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, whatevers. So that means like The Last of Us, Valkyria Chronicles, Dragon's Dogma, Ultimate Marvel's Capcom 3, Bioshock, stuff like that I would normally recommend. I'm not going to, because you can get better versions on modern consoles. So what I will recommend instead are some that are locked to the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but you can get most of these on Steam. Yeah, you can get all these on Steam. But for the purposes of this discussion, we're going to go ahead and just talk about a few of my favorite physical games. So I'm going to start with Mirror's Edge. Mirror's Edge is a first-person platforming game. I would not recommend trying to engage with the shooting mechanics because they are not good. But if you engage with it the way that it's intended, which is to treat it as it's linear and there's a best path and your goal is to figure out what that is. You're going to parkour your way through the maps and run around and leap off of walls and do all this kind of cool stuff. That's where the joy in this is. It also has a strong graphic style, and it stars a woman of color in Faith, who is Asian, which we need more people of color in leading roles. No question. But ultimately, Mirror's Edge is a surprisingly good game. I've heard more mixed things about Catalyst, but I can at least say that this game's good. I have bought it 3 times. Don't be like me. Buy it once and keep it. It's pretty cheap nowadays. I think it's $20 or less. Next up is Portal 2, which was the one exclusive to Valve that Valve brought to the PlayStation 3. And it's a good port. I'm sure the Steam version's probably better, but it's got a really, really good campaign. It's got really, really fun co-op modes. It stars a woman of color in Shell. It's got an excellent story. It expands upon the original game nicely. I still prefer the original Portal only because of how revolutionary the original Portal was, but Portal 2 is arguably the better game. It's on my top 111. It's just splendid. Next up is Deus Ex Human Revolution Director's Cut. To my knowledge, this never got ported up, so it's still stuck on those consoles. It's a really, really good game. I really love Deus Ex. It's in my top 25, or at least top 30. I really like Deus Ex Human Revolution. It has a few missteps, especially when it comes to casting. It has one of the most racist portrayals of a woman of color in a modern video game, and it's disappointing with the director's cut that, to my knowledge, they did not correct that. It also has a couple of disjointed bits with the DLC being tucked in, but it's overall it's the way to play this game. Beyond those little quibbles, it's a marvelous game. And last up is Dead Space 1 and 2, the best games EA's ever made. And I also would recommend downloading Dead Space Extraction from the PlayStation Store if you don't have it on the Wii or you don't have the limited edition of 2. Dead Space and Dead Space 2 are marvelous evolutions of the Resident Evil 4 gameplay style that add in a lot of psychological horror on top of the survival horror, and it's just the games are so good. They're so good. Dead Space 2 is in my top 20. Dead Space is in my top 50 still, I think. If not, it's really close to it. I just adore that series. And Extraction is it's kind of like a rail shooter where you're being guided, but it's a really good rail shooter. It's surprisingly good, actually. And I would recommend getting Extraction for the Wii, unless you have Move controllers around, in which case then go for it on the PS3. Extraction is one of the few games on the Wii that I feel did motion control right. I need to probably have an episode on that, probably whenever I get into my Wii collection. I do not recommend Dead Space 3. That is a atrocity to that series. It is full of corporate meddling and character assassination. Don't do it. Alright, well, since Strider 2014 is almost done, I'll briefly touch on that. Strider 2014 is the best Strider game out of all of them. I actually have a ranked of the Strider series. The only one I didn't cover on that is the Genesis Strider 2, which was not made by Capcom and has kind of been quietly shoved under the rug. So this is an excellent Metroidvania that does a lot of good stuff with the franchise, and it has a really good soundtrack. It's a lot of fun to play. Visually, it's pretty strong. It's not the strongest game on the PS3 by any means, but it's pretty strong. I love the art design. It does a lot with the mythos, modernizing it for this game. It's really good. It's a bit of an undersung game, and it was one of Double Helix's last projects before they got bought out by Amazon to do nothing. So that is also locked to the PS3 and the Xbox 360 digital storefronts, unless you go and buy the Japanese version. Pac-Man Championship Edition DX is still locked to the PS3 and Xbox 360, if my memory is not mistaken. And it's different from Championship Edition 2. And it's really good. This was actually the first digital download I bought on my PS3. And it's still here because it's that good. I bought it in 2011. It's a really good modernizing of that game. I highly recommend it. It's arcadey, it's fun, it's got a great aesthetic, just really worth picking up. Sonic CD. You can get this on Steam, but in terms of consoles, this is still locked to the PS3. I don't think it even came out on the 360. But Christian Whitehead's port is marvelous. It's the best version of this game. It's my favorite Sonic game. It's in my top 111. You can play with the Japanese or the American soundtracks. Just really good stuff. Dungeons & Dragons Chronicles of Mystara. These two games have not made the jump to current consoles. These are Capcom beat-em-ups based on the Dungeons & Dragons license that are among the best ones they made. high quality 2D artwork, engaging gameplay. George Kamatani from Vanillaware, before he founded that company, worked on these, and so if you play Dragon's Crown, you'll see some evolutionary connection to these games. And they're multiplayer, so I'm not sure why Capcom didn't relicense these to re-release them, but I believe they're still purchasable, so buy them if you haven't. Nights into Dreams. This is one of the few Saturn ports that ended up on the PS3, and I don't believe this ended up on the 360 either. I could be wrong on this one, but after Balan Wonderworld's spectacular flop, maybe going back to this Saturn Classic will be the remedy you need for that game. I haven't played it, so I'm not going to get into it any more than that. Elevator Action Deluxe is kind of a strange game. It's a modernization of the arcade original. So if you're like me, pine for the days that Elevator Action Returns gets any sort of modern release. This will not probably hit that note if you want a game like Returns. If you are into a slightly prettier version of the original arcade game with new levels, lots of new levels, and cameos of other Taito properties like Time Gal and Kiki Kakai, this could do it for you. I can't give it a high recommendation. I just have it back on here because I didn't want it to not be on my PS3 if I lost access. Bionic Commando Rearmed. I have to say that the NES Bionic Commando is in my top 15, so it means a lot to me. And I have a hard time letting go of my love for that game when I play Rearmed. Rearmed is its own thing. It's using the NES game as a base, and it's not the same game. It's good. A lot of people love Rearmed. If you don't have it, it's still locked on this system. You could get it on Steam, but if you want it on PlayStation 3, I would get it because it is a good game. I just have to get over myself. And last but not least, in terms of the stuff that I'm going to recommend on the PS3 storefront, is Fighting Vipers. I loved this game when I was a kid. I remember when I went to go to Lake Tahoe as a child with my parents, and they were doing their gambling thing, and I was in a huge arcade. I remember spending a lot of money playing Fighting Vipers. So it was really cool that Sega did re-release this on the PS3. So I bought it. I can't say it's better than Virtua Fighter 2. Can't say that at all. But in terms of nostalgia and just aesthetics, I really like Fighting Vipers, even though it's not the most attractive of games. Alright. There's a whole bunch of stuff to consider. You have until July to buy things on the PS3 store. I would get into the store and talk about more stuff on there, but I hate that store. And when I bought stuff earlier this week, that was the last time I wanted to get on it. And then I had to reinstall 3 games that magically disappeared off of my system. So I had to go into the store again today. In the middle of this video shoot to do this, and that's why I'm doing it in the middle of the recording. So I apologize for that, but that's just sometimes the nature of things, is having to correct things on the fly. I do recommend Dragon's Dogma. As you can see, that's my background, is my Dragon Dogma character Nicole hanging out. I do recommend that if you don't have any other way of playing it, but it's on the Switch, it's on the PS4, it's on the Xbox One. It probably looks nicer on all of those systems and probably has a few more features. I'm probably going to get it for the Switch physically at some point, but Dragon's Dogma is really good. It surprised me at how much I got into Dragon's Dogma. It's a top 111 game too. Alright, well, we're going to cat intermission now. Welcome back! I wanted to do a collection thing because I was talking about it when I was recording the last bit. And all the PlayStation stuff is over here on this side of the cabinet. So let's maybe touch on PlayStation stuff. I have PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 PSP game. And ultimately, I have more history probably with the PS2 and the PS3 than anything else in here. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to run through them all. I think I'm going to run through them all. This might be a long video, but if you want to hear my thoughts on PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and PSP games that I have, you are in luck. It's the PlayStation episode today. I'm going to skip over the stuff I talked about in the first half, so I won't get into Days Ex or Dead Space again. But we'll cover everything else, and if I have any history with the game, I'll share it. If I don't, then I'll just touch on it and we'll move on. Where to start our PlayStation experience, which I think is a catchphrase of theirs. I guess we'll start at the beginning. We'll start with the PS1. I have a decent PS1 collection here. I'm still acquiring items. There's still some games that I want to get for the PS1, but let's cover what I have and then I will attempt to remember what my wish list is. So we'll start with Valkyrie Profile, which I have played a bit of. I need to get back into it. I like it. I just, it was a little bit more than my brain was willing to cope with at the time. I bought this in Dublin, California, and I traded in my Lufia 2 that was boxed with everything and got enough credit to buy this and the Twisted Tales of Spike McFang. This was not cheap. It's probably more expensive now because Square Enix is yet to re-release any of the Valkyrie Profile games on modern platforms. So I'm happy to have it. To me, someone who got bounced off of Lufia 2 hard when Salon and Tia were kicked out of the party because of misogyny, I was more than happy to trade that in for something else. So, next up is Bushido Blade, which I got from a forum friend. I like this game. It's very unique. It's one-on-one combat in these huge potential arenas that you could run all over the place, and like you could actually like leave the map and come out in a slightly different part of the map. And it's set in modern times, but it's all with ancient weaponry. And as you play through the game, it has like a built-in honor system, and it also has one of the most unique fighting concepts in a game because you basically are like real life people. If you get hit in the head with a sword, you're dead. If you get hit in the leg with a sword, you're going to limp because you can't walk anymore. If you get hit in the arm with a sword, your swings are not as effective. It's a really cool game, and there's a sequel that adds more characters and I guess probably more gameplay and stuff. I wouldn't mind picking that up, but I really like the original Bushido Blade, and it's kind of a shame that Square Enix has just kind of forgotten that series exists. Next up is Star Ocean, the second story. This came to me most recently. This is my most recent PS1 game. This is from another forum friend. I didn't think I was going to be getting this one anytime soon, but he was selling it, and I got it for a pretty good price, so I'm not going to complain. But I've always wanted to try this. One of my best friends, I believe, played this game when we were younger, and he loved it. And I've always kind of wanted to dabble with the series, so I've got the first Departure R on my Switch, and now I've got the second story, which the second story is supposedly the best one. Alright, next is Dragon Warrior 7. My best bud JD sold me this. Most of my Dragon Quest collection actually is from JD, including this. It's complete. It has all the stuff. I also have, just for reference, the 3DS remake that I haven't got into yet. I'm currently playing through 11S, which is really good. I'm going to probably take a small break to play Lost Words Beyond the Page that just came out, but Dragon Quest XI's is really good. I have 7 in this form because the opportunity was there, so I took it. Kind of the same thing with the Dragon Warrior games, having all of them on the NES, and they're all in box, which I'll get to. The NES Famicom Collections video is going to be a wild, wild thing here in a few months, I tell you what. Alright, and this is, next up, Vandal Hearts by Konami, the other prominent RPG series they came up with during the PS1 era. The third was Azure Dreams? I don't have that one yet, but I would pick that up too. Vandal Hearts and I have had a bit of a tumultuous relationship. I've had this before in a 1-disc version, but the disc had rotted, so it wouldn't read. So I had to get rid of it. I kept the manual in case I came across the disc, and then I believe I got Vandal Hearts. Yeah, I got Vandal Hearts from a different forum friend. I have many forum friends who sell things. And I was very grateful for her to let me have that, so I can finally see what that's all about. It's more strategy, like tactical, than Suikoden. And another Konami game, the original Silent Hill. I bought this at a thrift store where I used to live for $3, if I remember right. And I love the original Silent Hill, and I love the 2 sequels that followed it, so I'm never going to get rid of that. The original Silent Hill's not in my top 111, but if I did a top 150, it would be. It's really, really good. And then the last Konami game is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This is a top 20 game for me. Second favorite Castlevania of all time, behind Aria of Sorrow, which I would pull out, but it's in the other cabinet. Phenomenal game. Phenomenal game. Proved how much more there was still left in the 2D games of yore. Made a star out of Koji Igarashi, who has gone on to do more Castlevania games than now Bloodstained. I have played through Symphony of the Night 3 times. Once on my PS2 and then twice on the PS3, I think. Marvelous game. I got that from a forum friend from a different forum. That forum friend used to write on Levels a long time ago, but since I don't currently talk to him, I'm not going to name drop him here. Next is that Namco Museum that I didn't show you earlier, number 3, the most popular one. This one really has all the hits. It has Ms. Pac-Man. It has Dig Dug, Tower of Jiraga, Galaxian, Pole Position 2, and Phozon, the least known of all those games. but this was the one that sold the most, so I found it at a thrift store for $2 complete. I'd like to have them all complete, but unfortunately, especially 4 and 5 are expensive. So again, that's why I recommended them. And then last but not least for the PS1 games is this kind of beat up Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. I got Lunar Silver Star Story and this somehow. I want to say I probably bought it from a forum friend, but I do not remember where I got them from. I do not have Silver Star Story anymore. I didn't get into... I played it for about an hour and it just wasn't quite clicking for me. This one I like more. But I do, buried up there, I don't know how far up the camera is right now, but I do have the puppet from Silver Star Story of Galleon. I bought that at Gamers in Control in Salinas. Who I'm happy to name drop here because I just got off the phone with the owner Aaron a little bit ago, and we're gonna see what he can do to help me with the Famicom in terms of getting the NES carts, which I would love to give him my business, and he said he's more than happy to help me try to find these carts. So we'll see how that goes. I'm also trying really, really hard to get another order out for the Japanese side of things. So far I've been really lucky and no one has bought the stuff that I have on hold. But the prices are slowly decreasing. So I'm wanting to let it go through the weekend and maybe one more rush of Famicom carts before I place that order. But it's really stressful. Breath of Fire 3, Jade Cocoon, and you can see my copy of Sly 2 for the PS2. That's all of the loose games that I currently have. Breath of Fire 3 came from a thrift store I used to work at, actually. There was a thrift store where I used to live that got so many games in that they were having trouble screening them all. And I worked out a deal with the owner to serve as the game tester for a couple months before she transitioned out of doing a thrift store and into doing a sandwich shop. And that was fun, going through all that stuff, and I got quite a few pretty good game trade-ins doing that, but it was just a disc, unfortunately, but it works fine last I checked it. And then Jade Cocoon is a holdover, and it's probably something I might sell. Returning back, I got rid of cases for quite a few of my PS2 games for a while because I just threw them in that case. So my Capcom Classics collections, volumes 1 and 2, which the manual for volume 1 just decided to pull some slapstick there, are in here. It's amazing to me that the depth of these two discs still, to some extent, have not been rivaled by anything Capcom has done since. Their little PS3 arcade thing that they attempted was way too limited to just the 80s and like the early 80s. And Capcom Home or Arcade Stadium, the most recent one for Switch, is close, but there's still a bunch of stuff that's missing off of these. So Capcom Classics Collection 1 is a compilation of the 5 PS1 titles called Capcom Generations. So that's why the selection is so focused on like the 1940 series, the Street Fighter series, Ghosts and Goblins, Commando, Bionic Commando, and Mercs, Gunsmoke, and then a couple others like Final Fight's on here, as well as Sector Z and a few others. But the second one really opens things up and has all kinds of interesting things like Three Wonders and Block and trying to remember what else might be exclusive. And Quiz and Dragons. So there's some interesting stuff on there that still hasn't shown up. So I'm hoping that Eco Fighters. That's a really good one actually. So I'm hoping that Capcom just doesn't abandon Arcade Stadium with the 32 games that they've already released and keeps it going, because there's a bunch of stuff on this collection that isn't on that yet. Next is Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. I got this at Gamers in Control. This is the most controversial Breath of Fire game because it does its own thing. Some people love it and some people really hate it. I've never played it, but I love the Breath of Fire series in terms of its artwork and aesthetic. And I have 3, 4, and 5 through various means, as well as 1 and 2 through the Switch Super Nintendo app. So eventually I will probably sit down to dabble with the series more. The most I've played is Breath of Fire 2. I got probably about a quarter of the way into that on the Game Boy Advance. But that localization is so rough. They really should have done more with that when they ported it there. Alright, next up. Speaking of things that haven't properly been replicated on modern consoles, it's Taito Legends 1 and 2. They're both in here. These are my favorite compilations on the PS2. Yes, even over Capcom Classic Collection. Because Taito is an awesome developer that does not get anywhere near the amount of acclaim that they should overseas. They are well regarded in Japan. They are less regarded overseas. Most people will know them from Space Invaders and Bubble Bobble and Bust a Move. But there is so much more. And these collections are a great way to better explore a lot of their back catalog. They're not perfect. In fact, Taito Legends 2 had a very convoluted system of releasing their titles, where they released some exclusives on the PS2, some exclusives on the Xbox, and some exclusives on the PC version. And it's like, why did you do that? This is not Pokemon. Don't do that. So the PS2 version has some things that the others don't. I don't remember off the top of my head what all the unique ones are. I just remember that like Kadash is an Xbox 360 exclusive, while we got like Ray Storm. And then of course in the localization process, games were dropped as well, including a couple that would have been nice to actually see. Hamster has been re-releasing a lot of Taito's games, including some that weren't on these discs, which is nice. And Taito themselves are kind of doing premium editions of their own stuff, so you can get, like, Darius is kind of the current thing, but they did a Space Invaders thing, and those have been through strictly limited and in games for North America, and you can get the in games ones on Amazon if you missed out and they don't still have stock on strictly limited. I have the Darius Cosmic Collection, which is working in here somewhere, probably with the Square stuff. Taito is owned by Square Enix. Here they are. And I showed those off in the very, very first video I did for Levels Plus, way back in December, I just want to say. There's a couple Darius games on here, but not all of them. So for that, I'm very happy to have those strictly limited. I did not go for the Space Invaders one because I'm not that into Space Invaders. I do love Darius though; it's one of my favorite shoot 'em ups. Next on the PS2 is Silent Hill 2 and 3. I've got the manual of 3 out here, but I have complete in terms of manual and disc. I have the soundtrack for 2 that I bought digitally, and the disc for 3 that came with it when I bought it. I bought 2 and 3 at Toys R Us when they were clearing out PS2 games. And it was a great deal. Oh, I accidentally skipped one, but we'll come back to the one I skipped here in a second. I love these games. Silent Hill 2 and 3 are top 60 games. They're just off of the top 50. Just off. Both of them are some of Konami's best work, and it's an absolute shame that Team Silent no longer exists and that Konami doesn't care to keep it going. I'll probably do a Silent Hill retrospective in more detail on those 3 games in the future. I could just kind of go. I got both the Taito Legends games at Circuit City, and I believe I also got Capcom Classics Collection, both from Circuit City. I used to shop there when they were a real store. Next is Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmaria. This is complete. I got this from a forum friend as part of my big PS2 run, which I shared on LVLS Weekly a few weeks ago. I wanted to get this to see how it compared with the original. If I like the original, I hope I like that. I know it's a little different, but that seems to be what Valkyrie Profile does, is that it doesn't stay consistent. I had the DS Covenant of the Plume, but I just did not get into that game. Alright. Next up is Suikoden 3, Suikoden 4, Suikoden 5. I still can't believe I have these. These 2 came from the same forum friend who gave me a Valkyria Profile and many of the other PS2 games we're about to cover. And I bought this one from the same forum friend that I got Star Ocean from. I haven't got into those yet because my TV is not compatible with PS2 to run them. So I haven't had a chance to dive into those yet, but I'm very excited to have them, and it really makes me want 1 and 2 physically, but then I see how much they run, so probably gonna get the Japanese ones because they're cheaper. Next up on the list is Shadow Hearts. Shadow Hearts Covenant. Shadow Hearts from the New World. Boy, I've had some off and on with that series. I bought From the New World from the same thrift store I used to work at. It was only the disc though. And then I got Shadow Hearts Covenant from a forum friend on a previous forum. She needed the money and I wanted to play the games. What I had experienced from the New World was good, so I wanted to, and I knew that they were hard to come across. So bought them then. I played through all the Shadow Hearts. It's fine. The gameplay's great. The localization is horrid. That is a rough game to listen to the voice acting on. Covenant annoys me because they turned our protag boy, whose name I forget off the top of my head, and they upped the perv factor significantly with him, and it's obnoxious. And then there's an old man that's also a perv, and it's obnoxious. Shadow Hearts is such a good gameplay series with awesome art design and incredible music, but god dang it, man. I really wish the horniness was dialed back several pegs in that series, because it is way too much, way too often. From the New World, unfortunately, still has the same problem, and then it also decided to cast Native American characters, so there's a lot of racism involved in the series too, and it's got some weird homophobic stuff, or at least I don't know if it's deliberately homophobic. It's insensitive, we'll say. If I had the power to buy the IP from whoever owns Aruse now to re-release these games, I would director's cut them and just resolve all of these issues. Problematic like. This is Eternal Poison, which comes with a bonus soundtrack CD. I know nothing about this game. This is one of the games that I got from my forum friend who gave me a bunch of stuff. He also gave me the Shadow Hearts games. I should say that too. It looks interesting. I know nothing about it, so I'm not going to dwell on it too long. Alright, we got some SNK games back in the period where they didn't release their own stuff. Ignition was helping them. So I've got Metal Slug Anthology, which is still one of the best ways to play all these games, depending on which version you get. I think the PS2 one is the good one. I think the one on Wii is rough. I don't know about the Xbox One, if they did for Xbox. But I haven't noticed any major issues. You can get most of these now on the Switch and the PS4 on the Neo Geo arcade archives. But I think 6 is still, 5 and 6 might still be locked to here. I really like the Metal Slug games. I have 3 or X still on my list, on my top 111. King of Fighters 11 is my favorite KOF game. I'm really glad to have this because they've not really done a whole lot to keep it modern beyond Limited Run re-releasing. I don't even think Limited Run's got to this yet, but they probably will because they keep re-releasing all the PS2 games on PS4. But this is a lot of fun. It's SNK's attempt to apply tag mechanics into the King of Fighters series. Your mileage may vary, but I really like the way that it plays. I like the roster for the most part, although there's some weird omissions. Like, Leona's not in here. Mai defaultly was not in here, which, you know, I could care less if Mai's in here or not, but she's kind of important to the franchise as much as I don't like her. But really good game. Highly recommend checking that out. And then Fatal Fury Battle Archives 2. I've just held on to this because I like the Real Bout games the most out of the Fatal Fury series outside of Mark of the Wolves, which they didn't release on the PS2. So I have that on my Switch. But the emulation on these is fine, from what I remember. And look, it's a Finn. I get to see Finn hop into the shelf while I'm digging all this stuff out. So that did recently get a limited run, so I guess it's on PS4. And I guess I'll pull the rest of these out because Finn wants to sit in here and explore. So next up is R-Type Final, one of Irem's last games. This was actually released by Eidos under their Fresh Games label, when they briefly did that before Square Enix bought them out. I like the original R-Type a lot, and I have R-Type Final 2 on pre-order for the Switch. And the same person who had Star Ocean and Suikoden 3 sold me this as well. So it's nice to have the original Final. And I guess I got to track down the other ones, because Irem pulled all of the R-Type games off of various download services. The only one that is like active and modern, I guess, is the TurboGrafx Mini and R-Type Dimensions, which Tozai Games has released, and that's what I played the original R-Type on, and it's worth the time. Here's Coldcept, which I got this at the thrift store I used to work at. It didn't have a case, but it's the disc and the manual. So this has one of my favorite game songs. I just recently talked about it, but I haven't delved into it too much yet, so I can't really elaborate on it more beyond it has a cool soundtrack, and I think a board game with a deck building battle engine is kind of unique. Here's Grimoire. This is one of Vanillaware's first games, and you can tell it's a Vanillaware game because they can't resist being pervy about their female characters. This is a pretty good game from what I understand. I haven't played it yet. But this, like I said, was one of Vanillaware's first titles. It's a strategy RPG, I believe, with a lot of like a school element. So if it's, I hope it's good. I haven't played it. It's probably beautiful to look at. If there's anything I can say about Vanillaware's games, is that they're beautiful to look at, even if they're problematic. So starting with Grimoire on, these all came from my forum friend who gave me all these PS2 games. Mana Crimea, Alchemist of Alrevis. This is apparently connected to the Atelier series that stars a bunch of young women that I know nothing about. But apparently this was like what the games were before they really went in that direction. Curious. It was a gift. It was free, basically. So I figured I'd give it a shot. I got the complete like collector's edition of it. So it came with the soundtrack and a nice big box. And last but not least for the PS2 is Soul Nomad and the World Eaters. NIS America just announced that they're bringing this to the Switch and other modern platforms alongside Phantom Brave. September, I want to say. But I didn't know that when I got this at the time. So I just went ahead and grabbed it because I know nothing about this beyond it's a strategy RPG and I like those. So maybe I'll get into it. I don't know. Whew. That's all the PS2 games. Almost more than half of those I've gotten this year. I can't believe how many PS2 games I've acquired. It blows my mind. So let's do the PS4 and PSP stuff real quick because it's really small. And again, all of these came from the same friend that gave me all the other PS2 stuff. So we'll do the PSP game first. I've got Castlevania the Dracula X Chronicles. This is something I will probably never actually play because the PSP is so down on my list of systems that I want to acquire. That I got this because I love Castlevania and I want to have physical versions of all the games. So here it is. I got it. I have Doom. I can't get into any of these because I haven't played them. I have Bloodborne, and I have Nier Automata for the PS4. But my plan is to get a PS5, but I'm kind of bothered by the direction Sony's going lately because they're doing some things that are very concerning with their staff. Like they dissolved Japan Studio and they lost a lot of talent there. And then there was a story about how a company that's been supporting their bigger devs was pitching a Last for Us remake, and then Naughty Dog took it over. And the head of the studio quit. So not really sure if I'm liking the direction Sony's going right now. So I may switch sides and actually get an Xbox Series S or X, whichever one's got the disc, because at the very least I could play Perfect Dark. And all the multi-platform stuff's there. I just would miss out on the Sony stuff, and I don't know if I care anymore. So I don't know if I'm going to keep the PS4 games. I may not. I don't know. So in terms of the PS3 stuff I did cover, I've got the original Last of Us. I don't have any desire to play Last of Us 2. I think they took the story in a direction I didn't want it to go. You want to talk, bud? You want to tell me about Last of Us 2? I have no issues with the characterization of Ellie or the addition of Abby, who I think Abby is awesome based on what little I've seen. I just think that it's more violent than I want to have in my life right now. And I don't need that in my life, so I'm just saying nope. Original Last of Us is perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. It's a great game though. I really enjoy it. And but I don't think I need to deal with the sequel. The DLC for Last of Us is okay. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, one of my favorite fighting games of all time, follows up one of my probably my least favorite fighting game of all time, the original Marvel vs. Capcom 3, in which Capcom really messed up everything about that release and released this 11 months later. While it's a marvelously good game, I am still upset at Capcom for doing that, and I bought that used to make some foolish point to myself. Valkyria Chronicles. This is a beautiful game. the visuals and aesthetics are just top notch. And I am probably about close to halfway through it, and I just put it down and I haven't got back into it. There's a piece of me that wants to just buy it on the Switch and can start over, but I think there's no reason for me to do that other than I want everything on the Switch. But I really like that game. It's got a really good soundtrack too. I need to get back into it at some point. Maybe when I get done with Dragon Quest. I got the orange box. This was actually one of the last PS3 games that I picked up. I got this at Gamers in Control. Good chunk of my PS3 stuff's from Gamers in Control, actually. I think Dragon's Dogma came from there. The Bioshock collection I'm about to talk about. Mirror's Edge. I got this for Portal, so that way I don't have to play it on my laptop. But it also has Half-Life 2. Which I am looking forward to trying out. I like the original Half-Life, but I haven't really got into the sequel at all yet, so curious to see how that goes. And then the last game I'm going to talk about today is the Bioshock Collection Ultimate Rapture Edition, which has all of the bonus content from 1 and 2, and these are the ones to get. Bioshock 1 may be a little ham-fisted in its messaging, but at the time it was pretty profound, I thought, the way that they handled the whole Andrew Ryan thing. I haven't played 2. Whenever I feel like getting into a first-person shooter, I'll probably play that. Infinite, I have it to sell. That game is pretty much the textbook definition of if a white person who doesn't fully understand the history of what they're trying to express tries to both sides a 1800s era history piece. Elizabeth is awesome though. I still have her figure. I think she's either up here or over there, or over here somewhere. I think she's up there though. Elizabeth is a good character until the Burial at Sea things ruined her, because let's just say that the director for that game just couldn't stop ruining it. There's a lot of things I like about Infinite too, but can't quite look past the really, really bad understanding of race dynamics that's in that game. So that's all of my PlayStation games. A very PlayStation heavy episode. I still have my PS2 and my PS3. Like I said, I was planning to get a PS5 at some point. I'm in no rush because there's nothing really new on it that I want to play. But I might go to Xbox. I might actually go Xbox Series X. I'm surprised I'm even thinking of it. But outside of the Horizon games, Sony's not doing a whole lot that I'm interested in at this point. They've kind of shelved most of the stuff that I like. Sly Cooper, I love the Sly Cooper games. I would give a new one a shot, but they're not going to do that. And their just reckless abandon of the PS3 store, their disregard for the PS1 and PS2 era, it's bad. It's very bad. Yeah, Finn agrees 100%. Here, why don't you join me for the ending, bud? Why don't you join me? Where's you? Come here. Hey, well, that ends this week's episode of Levels Plus Weekly. Finn and I say goodbye. Want to say bye? Yeah. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.